Welcome back to another episode of the Bearcat Basketball Podcast. This is Season 2. I'm your host, Alex Meacham, former UC basketball player from 1997 to 1999 under the legendary coach, Bob Huggins. I was fortunate enough to wear the iconic Jordan brand unis during my time. Now, you can follow me on social media. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Alex_Meacham. Meacham is spelled Meacham. I'm also on Facebook and LinkedIn, Alex Meacham. I'm on Snapchat, Big Meach 41. And now, I can officially say this, on Season 2, I am now on TikTok, at Alex Meacham 41. This is a special edition of the podcast, my interview series with a very special guest. The Bearcat Basketball Podcast is now presented by the Healthcare Management Group. And shout out to everyone at HCMG, and thank you for the support. Bearcat fans, I'm excited to welcome in our next guest. This former Bearcat player was part of one of the most successful and popular teams in Bearcat history, current color commentator for the Bearcat basketball team. He is the triple OG from the LBC, Long Beach, California. Hey, I'd like to welcome in my guy, number 33, Terry Nelson. What up, T-Nell?
Meach, what's going on?
Oh, man, just trying to deal with this snow, bro.
Right.
How about you?
Deal with it. Man, I manage an apartment complex, so there's a whole crew of people that's been going. We got several of the maintenance men that were, trying to clean the lot. When you have those big plows, you push all the snow in back of every parked car. They have a hard time getting out,
Uh-oh. I'm sure that didn't go over well. How'd you do? You managed for the streets today? Did you record any TV today?
Yeah, we had our recording for Bearcats Insider, which will air, Wednesday at 6 p.m. and then several times throughout the week. But we had a recording this. It was the streets, a lot of accidents on the freeway.
Really? I believe it. Hey, give us an update on your family. I'm sure most people listening to this podcast are already up to speed on what happened, but just give us an update and let us know if there's anything else we can do as part of the Bearcat Nation to help you guys out.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, physically they're healing. My mom is now able to stand up out of her wheelchair, walk around and get some things done.
Awesome.
Yeah, she broke her femur in 3 spots, broke her ankle, dislocated her shoulder, burn marks on her hands, some problems with her back, but she's healed miraculously. She's healing. Doing well. My sister's up and walking and back to being as grumpy as ever. And my niece, who broke her back and then she was paralyzed in one of her legs, she's actually up on treadmills now, and they're walking and they're working her really, really hard. She's got to use a walker for now, but she says, Unc, in about a month or two, I want to get rid of all this. She wants to be back to where she was, so she's got some feeling now in her leg. The strength is starting to come back. She gets out of therapy. She's been in therapy since this happened on December 11th, and so she gets out on the 24th of this month.
Oh, wow. Well, hey, listen, we are definitely happy that your family's doing better and on the right road. And you must, Terry, it's funny, you play college sports, and I tell young people that I work with that when you're part of a high school program, or if you're fortunate enough to play college basketball, you become part of, that college basketball program, you build pockets of families, right? And Terry, you are, like I said in the introduction, you are the triple OG of Bearcat basketball. You are the one that everybody looks towards, especially with the former players. And it's been awesome to see the Bearcat family kind of put their arms around you when you needed it the most.
That's awesome too, because you're so right. When you pick a university to go to school, you always have to think long term, like, is this a place that I want to live when it's over? And I knew when I came out here, I said, I want to stay here. I didn't want people to ask me, how come you didn't go back to Long Beach? Long Beach is, California's beautiful. I said, well, it's it's expensive, overpopulated. Everybody wants to be an actor or an actress or some type of entertainment thing. And it's just, I wanted to stay. It's like Cheers. You want to stay where everybody know your name. Why build a name for yourself and then leave? You see guys starting to come back now. Like I stayed here. Guys like Steve Logan, Art Long, like all these guys want to come back now. I know even Justin, Jennifer, and Kane Broom were talking about relocating back here to Cincinnati because these are all your resources. When you need help, the people that cheered for you, that people that wrote checks for scholarships and all the other stuff, they're here as a resource. The university, I have linked, just like you, I have linked my name with the university. Everything I've done to help promote the university, whether it be through, commentating or events or running the athletic alumni association, the C Club, whatever it is, like I love the University of Cincinnati. And then when I had a family emergency, I just sort of put out to my Bearcat family, I need some help. This is what happened. And when they saw the videos, they responded. And so I'm thankful for the city of Cincinnati.
Well, and Terry, we should, in a lot of ways, I think the city of Cincinnati is saying thank you to you because you've done so much. And one of my business advisors that Alan Costner, we're both you and I are very good friends with Alan, and he's mentored you. He's mentored me. He gave me some great advice years ago, and I think you're a great example of this. And he told me when I finished playing basketball for UC, I showed up to his office. I had my UC Bearcat Letterman coat on. I had my Bearcat gear on, and he said to me, he goes, you want to be able to move beyond that you were just a former player. You want to do things in the community. You want to be involved with the university, but, kind of get away from just being a former player and do so much more. And you've done that. Of course, everybody knows Terry Nelson played for the Bearcats, but they think about the color commentary. They think about all the different things you do, and I think you're a great example of that. So I think the community was basically saying back to you, thank you, Terry. So
I appreciate it. You're right. Whether it be the school assemblies, you and I have done the assemblies at the universities, whether it be at high schools, middle schools, junior highs. Giving back, I have PowerPoints. I work with, teams and doing leadership training with teams, like just different things that you try to leave an imprint because the doorway that opens is from the university. This is Terry Nelson, former UC Bearcat. Secondary is, hey, this is a guy that, he's radio voice or the Bearcats TV voice. So that's another entry. And then that gets their attention. And then you can continue to build into people. But I never, like Alan said, I never wanted to just be a former player and just take. Because as a former player, when I shot a ball in the gym, it was 7 to 8 managers getting a rebound trying to get the ball back to me. I had all the shoes I wanted, all the gear that, we can have. We didn't wear jeans and all that stuff. We wore sweatsuits and all the other stuff the university gave us. They brand you. And in turn, the fans and everything wants to look like you, so they buy all the stuff. Well, when it's over, you got to find the way to take all that goodness that was given to you and give it back to the next generation. I mean, as elders in the UC basketball program, it's up to us to start the next generation. I mean, teams weren't pressing until we start pressing.
Right.
Everybody wanted to do the UC press. A lot of these coaches that are coaching now in high school were at all our practices. You saw them on the sideline.
Yep.
They were getting the notes. Hugs had DVDs and books and everything on defense and pressing, and they emulated what we did in this whole culture. So there's a whole culture of people in the last 30-plus years that resemble us. And so it's up to us. And you do a fantastic job of mentoring guys in your Shine program. Every time I see you at a game, you got another player with you. You showcase people on social media, all these young players, and you see their graduations. And you do so much. And even with this Bearcat basketball podcast, hearing and capturing the stories, back when we played, we had Bill Cook and we had, Michael Perry and all these guys that would capture, whether it be the Post, the Enquirer, whatever. Now the shift in the economy or the world is podcasts. And so you have become sort of our Bill Cook. So you're the keeper of the stories. So you bringing these stories in are putting shine, no pun intended, on former players. Yeah, so people who haven't heard of Lavelle Durton or all these other guys don't know the story of Art Long. You're getting firsthand knowledge, and what it's doing is letting people know, man, okay, what is Art doing now? Great. Right. Now that people know how they can get a hold of them, how they can help them, and it gives people the shot. Like you and I have been in the spotlight ever since we finished playing. Mm-hmm. A lot of these guys that just went into a family life and a work life, and people say, who else is on your team? Oh, yeah, I remember. Like they have to reach into the data bank.
Sure.
But you have provided a platform. So part of what you've done is you're constantly giving back. And then the more you give, it frees you up to receive more. It's just like a pot. If your pot fills with water and you just hold on to the water, you can't receive any more water because it's already filled. The minute you pour some of that water out and give it to the thirsty people around you, now you free up space for more water to come to you to disperse it.
Well said. Well said, T. And with that being said, I think it's a great segue to talk about this Bearcat family. Let's talk about this current Bearcat basketball team. Now, this segment is sponsored by the College of Arts and Sciences at the University of Cincinnati. They have a new flexible bachelor's degree that will allow you to graduate conveniently and affordably. You won't lose any credit or have to start over. I'll get you more information in future podcasts about that. Now, Terry, let's jump into this Bearcat team. They go on a 25-day pause after the Wichita State lost. And at that point, let's just be honest, they weren't playing the best basketball in the world. You know, they had only won 3 games to that point, returned from this pause with very limited practice time, a short roster. They just had to deal with a lot of adversity. Now, this basketball team could easily be 0-4 after the pause. Instead, they're 4-0. Terry, can you explain what this basketball team is doing?
They're playing for the name on the front of the jersey instead of the name on the back. You know, guys are starting to get comfortable with each other. They're starting to understand their role within the system. They know when they're checking into the game, if they're not starters, they know what the coach is putting them in the game for. They've had games this year. I mean, you're playing Tennessee, number 12 at the time. You lose by 9 on the road. You play Furman, you lose. You win that game by 5. You lose to X by 8. You lose to Georgia really big, by 15. It was probably much bigger than that. UCF, you lose by 5. You lose by 4 to Tulsa. You lose by, 6 to Wichita State. So all these, they were close. 5 in a row, they lost. 6 out of 7 they lost, and then they were postponed for 3 weeks. So people will think, yes, like you said, gosh, all these games off. They haven't had a full practice schedule. Managers are doing drills instead of the players. Right. Managers are in practice, and they have to play with less. And what that did was it allowed other people to showcase parts of their game. It allowed the coach to allow some people to play through some of the mistakes. Yep. He couldn't drill, take a guy out because he did something wrong and try to, put another guy in. He couldn't do that because he didn't have the manpower. And so because of that, you start seeing them starting to finish games off. They started to learn the recipe for winning. Instead of just trying to give the ball to Keith and get out of the way like Jaron Cumberland, everybody expected to be like that when it's your team. No, they got it from different people on the floor, and they bought into the idea that any particular day can be my day. And it could be within that game, I can have moments. Like we saw the other day where Keith had it going, and then Jeremiah had it going, and then all of a sudden to close the game out, it was DeJulius, 3 straight buckets. So you start to see in the system when it's spread, when you're digging down defensively, playing the way you're supposed to be playing, being scrappy, leaving nothing on the floor, playing with emotion, playing for each other. No lead is safe against this Bearcats team because they know how to fight and scrap, and I think that's been the key, Alex.
Yeah, for sure. And then so let's talk about someone you just mentioned, David DeJulius. Like that Temple game, he was just playing a different brand of basketball than I had seen prior to, and I thought I thought he's played well, but that was a different kid. He played 35 minutes, 26 points. He really turned this basketball team around. Can you talk a little bit about his play so far since the pause?
Well, he's a breakdown artist. He's so good at on the ball, giving you a crossover, a hezzy, and he gets, when he does his his crossover pullback dribble, his legs are almost like doing the splits. That's hard to guard. When you think the guy is going to blow by you because he's coming off that screen, he's going downhill, then he does a pullback dribble, and you try to close him out real quick, and then he crosses you back over, and he goes to the hole and jumps into you and shoots that floater. So coach wants him. He said he doesn't want a crossing guard at the point guard. He wants more of an Axel Foley, Beverly Hills Cop. Somebody loose with it.
Ain't falling for the banana in my tailpipe. That was just on TV the other day, man. Whenever Beverly Hills Cop is on, I stop what I'm doing. I'm like, I gotta watch this. You gotta respect the classes, baby. No doubt about it. Axel Foley.
But as a 26-point, when they only had 63, he was aggressive. He was attacking. He was going downhill. And I think he can do that more because I think he dances a little bit too much at the top of the key because he's trying to get a guy loose, and all of a sudden he passes it. And I'm like, look, when you got a guy cross, take him.
Yeah.
Take him, but he is starting to find guys know when he's dancing at the top, they know to get into position because he may dance to create the second layer player. All breakdown artists believe they can beat the first guy. They're looking to see whatever way they go, who's going to respond in the help side defense. And then they kick it to that person's man. So if you saw a couple times where he broke the guy down, help side came and kicked it to the quarter to Jeremiah or to Micah Adams-Woods, and they bombed away from three. And I'm like, this is the kind of stuff we're talking about. We've been waiting for this for a long time for a point guard to be able to have a strong body, be able to score, demand, be a ball hawk on defense, but also be able to, find teammates and get them going.
And we're seeing all this coming off a 25-day period in which these guys haven't been together, which is so very impressive. And I want to talk about a guy who, prior to the four-game run here and the winning streak, I think one of the most criticized guy on the basketball team has been Chris Vogt. Fans are consistently kind of at his neck, and he's soft, and that. But I'm telling you what, the kid is playing better. I see them getting him the ball more in certain positions where they weren't doing that before. What's the difference? What are you seeing in Chris now that we didn't see before?
Offensive rebounding. He was top 5 in the conference last year in offensive rebounding, and not having a Trey Scott to loosen some of those balls up where everybody had to pay attention to Trey Scott.
That's a great point.
And get those offensive rebounds.
That is a great point.
Yeah. So you take that he's offensive rebounding, and then he's starting to become more of a basket protector. Don't necessarily have to block the shot. He had 6 2 games ago, and then last game he didn't have any. But I thought his defense was good because he walled up and made you shoot the ball over him. But offensively, he stands, and he gets pushed around a lot off the block and off the way he wants to post, unless it's a swing where he seals a guy. But when the ball is just on the side and he is standing and the guy is trying to push him off the lane, the official is allowing a little rough play for the younger, the smaller guys. You got a guy 6'7", 6'8". In our conference, we don't have a lot of bigs. So you got a guy, 6'8" playing, that's your forwards. So they get smaller than him, and they push him. And they push him in the legs. And because he stands straight up, he has no power in his base. So he gets pushed around. And then when that ball gets swung and he seals, he's low. He swings those elbows, and he extends that left hand off the glass. Yep.
Well, I'm happy to see, his progress and building some confidence. I think at one point last game, can't remember who threw him the pass, but they fed him in the post, turned, score, got an and one, and I just saw Keith Williams just kind of pump his fist and go over and high-five him, and you could just see Chris like, yeah, okay, I can do this. So I'm glad to see his progress. Now, to talk about Keith. Bearcat fans, I think, expected a little bit more from Keith this year. And I think, listen, there's been games where he's just shown glimpses of what we expect. I mean, just that greatness of superior athleticism. He's an elite scorer, but it's kind of been, off and on. Now, I think he's playing better. What can we expect from Keith moving forward?
Much as what you've seen before. If he learns to play, he's got two things. He got to learn to play under control. And he's got to learn to stay out of foul trouble. So those are the two things: is shot selection and foul trouble. We know he can score. We know he's a bucket getter. We know he's a tenacious defender. We know he can jump out of the gym. But he takes shots sometimes that are just off balance, one-leg floaters going the opposite way where he can't rebound it if he misses it. When he drives and goes left, he jumps off one leg and then shoots and then throws himself out of bounds, and he can't rebound the ball. And so they're bad angled shots. He doesn't try to use the glass. He's, just trying to shoot, floaters in there. And then, the aggressiveness when he turns it over and he's kind of embarrassed, so he tries to get it back.
Yeah. Yep.
And he fouls.
And he gets that foul. He gets that cheap foul. Yep.
Yes, gets a cheap foul. And the coach takes him out. He's, starts shaking his head, goes on the bench. And then he comes back into the game.
I'm seeing all this in my head as you're saying it. It's like I'm seeing it. Yep.
And then he comes back into the game, and he'll do some good, and then he'll take some shots that are rushed because he hasn't touched the ball. The ball is swinging left to right. Then it comes to him and stops. And I get it because it's supposed to be, his chance to do what he's got to do. But his decision-making at times has to get better because his talent level is there. And when he gets into a groove, he can run off 10, 12 points in a row. He can find guys. When he starts looking for guys, because everybody knows in the league, when Keith catches the ball, secondary defender must be prepared to jump in front of the circle. He's had a charge in, I think, every game this year.
Man.
Multiple charges in several games, But he doesn't know how to stop and pop. He won't consistently do it.
Okay, let me ask you, why is that? Because, if you look at it, there's definitely three levels of the scoring. You've got the three-point shot, you've got the mid-range, and you got all the way to the basket. And he's pretty much been just doing two things, either all the way or shooting the deep shot. That mid-range shot, he can shoot it. He can elevate high. I mean, he would cut down on so many of those charges if he just stop and pop. What do you think's going on in his mind that he's not doing that?
Well, Coach Brandon doesn't like that shot. First of all, he likes three-pointers and layups. He doesn't think the mid-range is a good shot statistically based on the analytics. But if it's between a stop and pop or a charge, guess what he should do? Stop,
no question,
and pop. But he's got to learn when he goes baseline. Like when he attacks baseline, because he's a tremendous baseline player. Very few people can play on the baseline like him. When he goes baseline, that secondary defender, the opposite side post guy, is going to come over and he's going to wall off outside there. If he learns to hop step sideways and kick it to a perimeter three-point, an opposite side, whether on the wing or in the corner, an opposite side shooter, and relocate, he'll make everybody better. He did it a couple times last game, and I was like, unbelievable how the game is so easy when he uses his skill to get everybody else open. If he can do that and avoid the charge, he will save himself because we're a better team when he's on the floor, when he's not taking bad shots, and when he is not turning the ball over.
I agree 100%. Now, let me ask you, if you look at the last four games that they've won, they won by 3 against Temple, 3 against Tulane, 2 against the second game versus Temple, and 1 against UCF. And me watching every single second of every single game, there were points in the second half where they could have blown these 4 teams out.
Yeah.
But they didn't. What did they need to do to start blowing teams out?
Well, guards got to rebound, and they got to continue to rebound to close out the possessions defensively. They gave up too many offensive rebounds. Guys are standing and, watching. They go up by 7 or 8. They make a little run, and all of a sudden the coach calls timeout because he wants to cement that memory in there, and they come right back out and give up a three. Right back out, turn the ball over, or if they don't get a 50-50 ball. The other team gets it, and they convert. And you got to the way the season's been going, every tough shot that people have shot against us in the shot clock situations seems like it's been going in.
Mm-hmm.
And Mick used to say that with his teams. It seems like, the year before we had the breakout year when Gary won all those awards, it seemed like everything that they did, when they had Octavius Ellis, like they never had any luck. And then you got Gary Clark. And then when Gary teamed with Kyle, they started getting lucky. They started, Troy started getting some luck, and they had really good point guard play. And, Troy didn't turn the ball over. And so you start seeing that situation that's happening, and you say, yeah, this team is on the verge of blowing some teams out. I know they don't like winning. They don't like all the close games, but you build something when you win close games.
Yeah, true.
Something about you, especially almost every game they've been in, they've been down double digits.
Yep.
Almost every game, they've been down double digits. But they find a way very quickly to tie the game up or even take the lead.
Yep.
But if they don't, they're playing out of position. Jeremiah Davenport, as good as he is offensively and as a spot-up shooter and an energy guy, and he can just flat-out score, he's playing out of position. He's playing a stretch four because they want, to keep the floor spread. So he's down there playing with guys 6'7", 250, and they're bullying him on the offensive glass. So it's one of those things where when it's a man-on-man situation, when that shot goes up, he's got to learn to turn and put that forearm in the chest, box a guy out right where he is. Don't let a guy, instead of turning around looking for the ball, don't let a guy push you under the basket, which was happening in Wichita. They pushed it right under the basket and got rebound after rebound. Same thing happened when we play at home. They push him under the basket. So as he gets stronger in his legs, with his work ethic and his attitude, he's going to be tremendous because everything you want a basketball player to be, Jeremiah Davenport fits that bill. Never takes days off in practice. He never, dogs it, doesn't talk back, plays fiery, family full of athletes. So he knows kind of the culture of what an athlete's supposed to be like.
Yep, agree 100%. And this segment is sponsored by the College of Arts and Sciences at the University of Cincinnati. And, Terry, I want to jump into this game versus Houston coming up Sunday. Oh, and by the way, do you think they'll schedule a game between now and Sunday, or you think they're just going to play Sunday?
No, it's just kind of unfair to unless if it's a game where UC, it's going to come to UC. But coach is preparing to get a week to play Houston. Didn't want to do an out-of-conference game because, with travel, with all the protocols, he didn't want to do something that was out of conference. If by chance there was another team of those 5 of the 6 that were canceled, one was rescheduled, which was the Temple game. If they can somehow make that up in between, then they will. But as Tuesday, that game would have to be Thursday. I don't know if they would do a Friday, Sunday.
Yeah, that's quick.
UC would have to go. Yeah, so UC would have to go to Houston to do that. So I just think it's a wrap. I think they had a chance to do it. I thought all along when I saw the schedule and I saw this week, I said they're going to use this week as a makeup week.
I did too. But I think the weather, you have to take that into effect. The weather is they're predicting more snow coming, and so there's all those factors. So and they've dealt with enough adversity already. And going into this Houston game, I like it because this team obviously on a 4-game winning streak, starting to build some confidence, and you're going and playing the best team in the league in Houston. You're going at Houston, so it's going to be a great test. What are your expectations for that game?
I just expect them to scratch and claw and play with fire. But they're going to be tested like they haven't been tested all year long since the Crosstown Shootout. And Crosstown Shootout, both teams were raw because it was so early, the first game of the season. But, you talk about what's going to happen with Houston. Kelvin Sampson built his whole team based around beating UC. When they first got in the league, and Mick Cronin and those boys was just beating them up because they were physically bigger. Cronin had men that had been through the program, so he had veteran teams. And so what he did is he had all his guys. I mean, you can go back and look at the YouTube videos on their channel, and they adopted a slogan, toughest team in America. And they started hitting the weights, and they started doing all this stuff to really build muscle on their bodies. Their guards look like running backs.
Yeah.
They got 3 or 4, I call them goons, that are just bigs that all they do is foul. They play big, they play physical, they rebound, they set screens, and they use their 5 fouls. They don't really care if they score because it's a guard-dominated team for Houston. So when I look at that, they're coming in there with the preseason player of the year on Houston, and they're going to be jacked. They're always jacked for UC. So some of these young guys are going to get baptized really quickly in intensity. Yes, they got it in Georgia. Yes, they understood it in Tennessee. I don't expect a blowout. I do expect Houston to get up double digits. I expect Cincinnati to fight back and tie, or if not, even go up themselves. It would shock me if Cincinnati came out on top. Every game that they played, pretty much, they had started out slow, except this last game. But Houston, playing at home, and the firepower they have, and the numbers they can throw at you, and guys that have been through that system, I expect Houston, because they're going to come out and play the best that they can play, because they want to stick it to Cincinnati. If they can beat Cincinnati by 20, they're going to try to beat them by 30. They just try to go at it. So Cincinnati will get tested very quickly with the toughness. And what gets me is we don't have a lot of depth at the forward position. The front line position, you got Tara, you got Mamadou, and you got Chris Vogt. That's just not enough. It's not enough to bang with Houston. So the guards are going to try to help. They're going to have to come knock some, double down and try to get some dig outs and then recover back to their three-point shooters. But I just don't hope we get bullied by the guards of Houston.
Yeah, and another thing that I see, I was around a coach probably around 10 years ago, and this coach taught me a philosophy that he had, and that is he always looks at the first 2 minutes and the last 2 minutes of both halves for his college basketball team. And he goes, I script so much stuff. I talk to our players about being sharp the first 2 minutes and the last 2 minutes. And if you go back and look at this Bearcat basketball team and their games, especially if you look at the last 2 minutes of the first half and the first 2 minutes of the second half, every game, it's just they're sloppy at times. And I'm like, if they can clean that up, man, they would make some big strides. Because the game of basketball, it's all about runs, Tino.
Yep.
And in the middle, so what this coach was telling me, in the middle of those two minutes, the bookends, in the middle, there's going to be runs back and forth. It's just a game of basketball, and it is what it. But if you can be sharp and focused the first two and the last two, you always have a chance. And if they can do that versus Houston, I think they'll be right there in that ball game. And so, as I'm talking about coaching, I do want to segue into Coach Brannon. And if you look at prior to the 4-game run, talking about Twitter specifically, Twitter was just like, hey, Coach Brannon's not the guy for this program and blah, blah, blah. And now, after the 4-game winning streak, people are starting to, understand they've had to battle through adversity, and Coach Brannon, I think, has done a nice job really working, through that and with this group. And people started to change their song. They're singing a different song. So what are your thoughts on Coach Brannon and what he's done this season so far?
Man, I love Brannon. It's a tough season. I mean, look at the top 15 programs in college basketball, win-wise, over the, all-time wins. None of them are in the top 25.
That's crazy. That's got to be the first time ever.
Yeah. So because the top programs are one-and-done programs. Other than Michigan State, they have some guys that stick around. But when you get to that level, they go to those programs because of the exposure, and so they can play 1 year and get out of there, and sometimes even 2. So, but what COVID did this offseason, I'm relating this to Coach Brannon and the reason that you have the gap in the losses that we had early. When they got on campus, as you know, Mike Rayfield used to be the guy that get their bodies in shape. So they would go from, 215 to 220, but they dropped, 8% body fat, and, they got muscle, they jump higher, their long jump is higher, all this stuff that gets higher. And then they have 3 hours a week to work with players. So they'll do three groups of, you and I have been in those things where they got, 3 guards, and they're doing shooting drills, they're doing 3 forwards next, and then, the bigs and all that stuff. And so they teach the offense from increments of 3. So if a guy goes here, we're going to do some baseline shooting. We're going to do some back cut shooting. We're going to do on-the-ball pick and roll shooting. We're going to do all this. We're going to teach the defensive drills in 3-man increments. They do all this. And then when the season starts, they put it together, and it flows quickly. So they only spend a couple days making sure it's fine-tuned, putting it together almost like an automobile maker, putting all the parts together. Mm-hmm. And then after that, they start putting in their specials. A game or two in, they start adding more plays. They couldn't do that. So all the high school kids came in with high school habits. They came in with the AAU habits. They came in with what they got recruited for, which was their ability to shoot and dunk and all this stuff. But on the college level, everybody can do that. The guy who never gets in the game can dunk and shoot 3. Watch the layup line. Some of the best dunkers never get in the game.
Right.
So, right. And it's one of those things where you have to learn how to win, and you have to have habits established and built. They didn't get a chance to do that. So the veteran teams in college basketball are balling this year, but the young teams are struggling because college basketball won't wait on you. If you got talent, that's good. But if you haven't got a chance to work that talent to take on the mentality of the school that recruited them, Cincinnati is known for toughness, regardless.
And I have a story to really piggyback what you're saying. If you look at the growth of Kenyon Martin from his freshman year to his senior year, he's one of those players of a long list of Bearcats that improved so much. If you remember, Kenyon kind of coming into the Bearcats program as a dunker and a shot blocker, and that's all he was, and he transformed his game. Well, I remember one off season, I was working out with Terrence Davis. You remember TD?
Yes, sir.
And TD and I every day were in Lawrence Hall, and we were working on ball handling, shooting every day for like 2 hours. And he was doing it to get ready for overseas, and I was just trying to do it so I could get better and compete and practice, so I could push the Melvin Levitts, the DeJuan Bakers, and the Steve Logans. That's the reason I was doing it. And one day, Kenyon Martin comes in, and he had just got finished lifting, and the bigs were going to do some workouts after. Kenyon came in, and he was like, what are you guys doing? And TD's like, hey, man, we're working on ball handling and mid-range. And Kenyon said, hey, can I come in tomorrow with you guys? TD's like, yeah, that's cool. So do you know Kenyon Martin came in every day? He lifted weights. He came in and worked out with us and doing guard stuff, and then worked out with the bigs. And I'm going to tell you what, the transformation of his game from the season prior to then that season was amazing. And it turned him into the number one player in the country, hands down, and one of the top college basketball players ever. And to your point, you look at a lot of these guys that played even last year with the Bearcats, they didn't get they couldn't get that experience that Kenyon was doing, going to the school and getting all these workouts in because of the pandemic. And people have to understand that, T.
That's right. They only see wins and losses. Fans, they live in chat rooms. They don't live in practice. They don't live on campus. They live in chat rooms about what somebody else said. Somebody said this, I heard this, and all of a sudden people start giving opinions on what somebody heard and what somebody said. But when you see the people that put in the work, I remember, Kenyon working with Chuck Mayshok and learning the back out move instead of just, Kenyon didn't really have an offensive game like he said when he first got there. He stood under the basket and goaltended shots. Mm-hmm. And, because he didn't have the footwork. Chuck taught him, footwork a little bit, how to get away. Harrison taught him how to play some post defense. And, instead of just trying to block shots all the time, he became a defender. And that's a big difference. Chris Vogt blocked shots. Kenyon, he can guard the point guard. He can slide his feet. He can put his arms between his legs and take the chest bump as you're trying to back him in. He's like, I ain't giving no ground. He can swipe the ball before it goes up. He can block the shot to the fifth row. He can grab it out the air and start to break. He could talk on the help defense. Kenyon was always talking. And then he held people accountable that didn't have the same work ethic as him.
Yes, he did. There's no question about that.
Yeah, so when you look at the examples that are set from our legends, if people would just use YouTube other than, looking at NBA highlights, look at some of your elders. We got some of the best ever Bearcats that played here, and they've got YouTube to show people what it is that they did. If they could just study some of the passion that they played with, if they can call and say, hey, man, when you did this, show me this move. Every legend, everybody steals from everybody else. Either you're a thief or you're an innovator.
Right. Oh, I totally agree with that. And with that being said, just quickly back to, John Brannon, and I think once he gets that full season of being able to be with the guys in the off season, start to get in his recruiting classes, I think this program is just going to rise, and rise. Do you agree with that?
Oh, I totally agree. I love John Brannon. I love the system. It's free flowing. If you're a shooter and a ball handler, playmaker, you would love playing for Cincinnati. He's a guy that's always positive. He's going to put you in the right situation. And if athletes can take constructive criticism, he's not going to curse you. But he's going to hold you accountable in a different way. And if you can take, most athletes don't want to be coached. The great ones want to be coached, but a lot of the athletes just want to play. They don't want to be coached. They just want to play. And because of social media, because there's so many people in the ear of the athletes, they have access. I'm glad I didn't have, there was no Facebook back when I played. There's nothing that would, there was no social media. Back then. But now, guy has, one bad game where the coach sits him down because the athlete wasn't rebounding, the athlete wasn't getting back on defense, he was blowing assignments. Because of that, if that's there, there's going to be 10 to 15, 20 people inboxing that person saying, man, what's wrong with your coach? Why he dogging you out? Because they like that dude, and they only trying to make sure that they being real to that person.
If you had Twitter when you played, how many times would Hugs have called you into his office about your tweets? Boy, I could see you got headlines without Twitter and Facebook.
Without Twitter.
You didn't need that.
No, man. I'm just kind of one of those guys that just would say what's on his mind, not really thinking about the ramifications.
Yeah.
And it would get me in trouble so much. So imagine Twitter.
You would have been, Hugs would have been like, God damn it, Terry.
It would have been like, in a sense, deleted tweets.
But no, you amongst that whole Final Four group, man, just personalities that just, I'm sorry, I was part of a great group, and there have been some great groups since you guys played, but there just hasn't been personalities like that Final Four group. In a collective group, there just hasn't been the personalities like that since then. You guys definitely were special. And this segment was sponsored by the College of Arts and Sciences at the University of Cincinnati, and the Bearcat Basketball Podcast is presented by the Healthcare Management Group. Terry, last question about this Bearcat basketball team. Win or lose against Houston on Sunday, looking at the rest of the regular season schedule, what's your opinion? Can they run the table? I mean, there's beatable teams here if the Bearcats play, good basketball. What are your thoughts with that 1, 2, 3, 4? I'm looking at 5 games after Houston.
They could. I mean, you talk about Tulsa, Tulane, Memphis, SMU, and East Carolina. All those games are beatable.
All winnable games.
All winnable games. So, if you talk about, they 7-7 now, what if they lose? They're 7-8. Then they run off 5 in a row. So you're talking 12-8, starting from where they started from. If you lose 1 down the stretch, you're talking about, what's that, 10 out of 11?
Mm-hmm.
So 9 out of 10 that you've won getting hot, whether it's an NIT or whether they go into the tournament and really surprise somebody in the tournament.
Yep.
Houston, they might be on the same side of the bracket. They may be on the opposite side. But somebody can beat Houston in this conference. And if that happens, if the number one guy is knocked out, number one team's knocked out, anybody's conference. So I don't take anything away from it. These guys are starting to play at a really elite level. And the fact that they did it against Temple twice, against the matchup zone, against UCF, those aren't the top echelon teams in the league. But those are the teams that, UCF beat them the first time. And, playing Temple, it's always tough to play Temple.
It is. And I like the job Aaron McKee's doing there.
I like Aaron McKee. He just got to get some local guys.
Yeah.
When it comes to Philadelphia, in order to get people at Temple, it's kind of hard to go to New York to get some players to go to Temple. It's a small school. It's cold down there. People don't understand the whole Philly vibe with 5 universities over in the Philly 5 over there in that area. So you got to recruit locally. And Philadelphia's got some great basketball. And if he can continue to do that, he'll be okay. Because, Fran Dunphy, who used to coach there for many, many years, is the acting AD. So he put him in power. So he's going to give him a chance to build his program.
That's helpful. That's helpful when the guy that's hired you is in position to make sure you are, doing well. And I think the other thing, too, I've watched both games, and he's just always teaching. And I know he's got some young guys, and he's not really screaming and yelling he's really trying to pull guys aside and teach them and understand that, there's so many teachable moments in a game. And I've loved his rapport, and I hope he does well. And Terry, the other thing, too, and I talked last podcast when I was talking with Keith Jenkins from the Enquirer, I was talking to him about I just love to see former players that played at that particular university do well. Penny, I think Penny is so good for college basketball. Lord have mercy, he's so good. I want to see, big Patrick Ewing do well. Oh, Juwan Howard. I mean, he's killing it. I mean, you talk about holding guys accountable during the game. He's letting these guys know. I just love seeing that, Terry. You were part of that whole, generation with Penny and with Juwan, and was Aaron McKee a little after you, or
no? He was
right
the same time. He graduated in '93, but we didn't play him. But yeah, he was same time.
Yeah, it's definitely great to see. Now, Terry, you being from the West Coast, we've got to talk about West Coast hip hop. Oh, we've got to jump into the top 3 greatest West Coast rappers of all time. Okay, you ready for this?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm gonna let you go ahead and start with your list. All I ask is you go from 3 to 1. So you start with 3, go to 2, go to 1, and then I'm going to give you some thoughts. But you're going to be the expert on this, being a West Coast guy. So why don't you run it down? Top 3 greatest West Coast rappers of all time.
Oh, my goodness. I got 1, and I got 2 number 2s. So I'm going to start at the bottom.
Wait. So wait, you don't have a number 3? You got 2
I don't have a number
2s?
3. I got 2 number 2s.
Okay.
All right. So here's one of my number 2s. Ice Cube.
For sure.
Ice Cube is definitely, he changed the game out there. I just love him. And his voice, it's powerful. It's, unabashful. It's one of those things where he's going to say what he's going to say. So it's Ice Cube. Ice Cube with his beats, it was, commanding beats. I love Ice Cube.
Yep.
And then my second 2 was Tupac. And Tupac just, he went from just, trying to put everybody in the hood on a song to making, like, classics. And that's when he started going to Death Row. He started just coming up with, the greatest, number 1, and that's Snoop Dogg.
LBC's finest.
Snoop Dogg. Went to high school with Snoop. Snoop is, to me, now I got some honorable mentions. E40, that's my honorable mention, but I got Snoop to me.
Wait, hold on. I'm not gonna let you skirt by E40. I'm not letting you. Wait a minute. You've got E40 as honorable mention?
Honorable mention, man. E40.
Sprinkle me, man.
Sprinkle me, man.
40
yeah.
water.
Yep. Nope.
E40.
That's awesome. Not Daz. Daz is okay. I'm talking about.
I mean, you gotta have Too Short in there. If you got
Corrupt.
E40.
Corrupt was in there. Too Short was okay. He made some good party music, but he didn't really make anything memorable. It was for, he was talking about girls and bees and all this other stuff. So he made stuff that made you dance at the party, but it wasn't some stuff that you want to play in front of your kids and say, hey, write this down.
Yeah, if anybody,
you couldn't do a seminar on it.
If any parents telling them to write down Too Short lyrics, well, they got some issues. I actually met Too Short. So I got to tell this quick story. So I'm in Las Vegas, and a friend of mine, Todd Wars, who went to UC with me, and he was a communication major as well. He just on a whim up and moved to Las Vegas, and he started working in the club industry and the promotion. So he was working at a club, and I was out in Vegas for an AAU tournament, and he told me, hey, come to my club. We'll get you VIP. I show up. I'm in VIP. Jermaine O'Neal is there, NBA guy. He's got a VIP table. And Wyclef Jean was there for whatever, I'm not even sure reason. But all of a sudden, out of the blue, Too Short gets on this, like, small stage and performs. And after it's over, Too Short went to this VIP area, and I said to my buddy Todd, I said, am I allowed to go over there? And he's like, yeah, put this wristband, walk over. So I walk up to Too Short, and, man, he was the nicest dude, Terry.
Yeah.
He sat there and talked to me. We went and got a drink. And he was like, hey, man, this is my buddy right here, and talked to his buddy. I'm like, am I really talking to Too Short? No, that was fun. But I'm sorry. Go ahead. You were talking. You were going in on Snoop.
Yeah, Snoop is when Snoop got out of jail and he was back, and he had the Gumby, the high top fade, with the split down the middle, real cool. He had his own language, and so he hung out with another guy from Long Beach that played on my basketball team, Nate Dogg. And, and Warren G is from Long Beach, but he went to another school. He went to Jordan High School. And so they formed this group. Nate Dogg dropped out of the basketball team because we both was on JV. But when I played, my sophomore year, they didn't have ninth grade in high school on the West Coast. And it was...
Wait a minute. They what?
Yeah, ninth grade in high school wasn't added in California until I was a senior.
Wow.
Yeah,
never
so
heard
junior
that.
high
Okay.
was 7th, 8th, and 9th grade.
That's interesting.
High school
okay.
was 10th, 11th, and 12th. So by the time I was a sophomore, Nate dropped off the basketball team to start singing. And I was like, man, this cat's singing? Like, he was thug, he used to steal, he used to do all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, he formed his group, him, Snoop, and Warren G, called 213.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what? And then so he took Snoop to the studio where Dr. Dre was performing World Class Wrecking Crew. He was in the studio, and then he was making his Chronic album. And then when Warren G went over there and put on that My Name is D-Nice instrumental, and Dre said, all right, get in the booth. And he got in the booth, and he rhymed for about 10 minutes, man, and put everybody in the studio in a rap. And when he got out, Dre said, here, you ain't going nowhere. I get the contract ready. And he at that moment started working on the Chronic album.
Mm-hmm. Classic.
Mm-hmm.
So wait, did you know? So you knew Warren G and Corrupt?
I didn't know Corrupt. I knew Warren G. I met Corrupt. So we got back from the Final Four. And I had knew that, because I heard on the radio that the Dr. Dre and all of them were going to be playing in Dayton. So they were doing the tour. Mm-hmm. So we got back. We was going to Primetime. And I Primetime, baby.
Oh, boy, that was dangerous. Boy.
So we about to go to Primetime, and I see this big bus parked in front with a Chronic leaf on the front. I said, that's Dr. Dre and Snoop. I said, come on, Snoop's here. So Corey was like, yeah, man, because you keep talking about you know this cat. You don't know him. We're going to see if you know him. All right, come on. So we walk in there, and the line was wrapped around the corner, and the owner's like waving us up. We all had our UC sweatsuits from the Final Four. It was like 6 of us. It was me, Nick, Corey, AD, Eric, Terrace. So we walk in there, and they're in the VIP section, and it's all roped off, and it's just like standing room only. And I'm like, Snoop! And he turned around. He goes, T-Nail, bring your butt all up here. So Corey was like, oh, it's on. Nick was like, I ain't riding nobody jock. And Nick walked in the crowd. So I go up there, and I meet. So Snoop gave me love, and he's like, Dr. Dre, this is my boy T-Nail, man. He said, man, y'all put Long Beach on the map. I appreciate that. He introduced me to Corrupt, Daz, Lady of Rage, RBX. They was all there. And so the server came out, and she had one of those serving trays, and she had 25 gin and juices.
Oh,
and she sat them down. I'm sitting over, and I tell this story to people, and I said, this is how focused they were, because they were like a young, hungry basketball team, because all these people around, all these ladies around, and Corrupt and Daz are sitting face to face with each other, talking about, look what I just wrote, look what I just came up with, and they going back and forth like, tell me how this sounds, and they was rapping to each other. There was no girls up on the stage. They wasn't trying to go after the women in the audience. Like, they were so laser focused on being great, because they knew they had something. And Snoop came and sat with me. Dre came, and Dre had on this hat that I had sent a bunch of hats to my boys, the twins, that Warren G produced. Mm-hmm. But when he got to the studio, Dre said, let me get that hat. It was a black UC hat with the white C-paw.
Mm-hmm.
And so Dre used it for Compton, and he went on MTV, and that was the first time people saw people with gear on from UC. And so
I remember
he was like,
that.
yeah, what's up, man? Yeah. So we gave love, we dapped, we hung out. And, me and Corey, we hung out for a long time with those guys, man.
That's great, man. That's a great story. So Nick was too cool for school?
Nick, I ain't riding nobody's jock.
That's funny. I could hear him saying that.
We finally called him up on stage. He ended
up coming on stage?
Yeah, he came on stage, but he didn't want to go up there. Like, he wanted somebody to call him up there. He didn't want to be a group.
School. Well,
right.
I'll tell you a quick story. So of course I grew up on all that hip hop as well, just like you did, and I liked Warren G. But I was a big Dog Pound fan, and Dog Food was my album, and it was. So I had a good friend. I got two good friends, Chad and Todd Turner, these two brothers, and we went to high school together. And they would have parties every Friday and Saturday night. And their father worked at Ford, and their father worked at night. So they would have parties every weekend. And I'm telling you, Dog Pound album was played from the beginning to the end of the party every weekend. People were so sick of us playing that, right? And so this was like 1995. And fast forward years later, I'm talking with Chad. And I'm like, man, I said, I would love to meet the Dog Pound one day. I said, if I ever get a picture with them, I said, I'm sending it to you. He was like, man, you'll never see them. Man, don't you know, I'm in L.A. one day, and I get invited to an event. A friend of mine had put on an event for K-Swiss, the shoes. Yeah. And I show up to it just thinking it was a fashion thing, and they had performers, and they had the stage set up. And Warren G performed, the Dog Pound performed, and I'm like, oh my gosh! So I told my buddy who was part of the event, I said, I got to meet him. He's like, man, I don't think it's possible, but he's like, I'll try my best. And so they just finished performing, and my buddy Blake, who's from Cincinnati, he told me, he says, man, go back there. Their bus is back there. Just go back there real quick. So I walked back there, and man, they're just standing there talking. I rolled up on Warren G. I was like, hey, man, what's up? I said, my name is Alex. I'm from Cincinnati. He said, you from Cincinnati? He's like, my family lives in Indianapolis. He's like, man, it's tough around there. And I was like, it's not as tough as out here. So I'm literally standing on the street talking to Warren G for a little bit. We end up taking a picture together. I'll send that to you. And then there's Krupp. Well, Daz took off. He got in an SUV and he took off. And Krupp's talking to everybody. So I roll over to him and I say, hey, Krupp, man, I said, I got to tell you something. And he kind of looks at me and I'm like, in high school, my buddies and I, all we would do is play the Dog Food album. And he looked at me and he said, man, your mom lets you listen to that? And I said, she didn't know about it. And I want to tell you something, too. I went to you'll love this part, too. I went to that event not knowing what it was, so I literally had on a T-shirt, like a Curtis Bostic T-shirt, one that was like 2 sizes too small. So it was an extra medium. And I had on like some hoop shorts. And Corrupt starts going, bro, what do you eat weights? Like, what did you, he was like, were you doing push-ups while we were performing? Man, he went off on me for like, he was like, you look like my bodyguard. He's like, I think you could beat up my bodyguard. Hey, man, come here and fight this guy. I'm like, oh, my Lord. I'll send you the picture of Corrupt and I. So I had to tell you that story. So Tina, let me give you my top 3, okay?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to go 3 to 1. So number 3 is your number 1. My number 3 is Snoop Dogg. And the reason I have him at 3, and honestly, he could easily be number 1 because if you take the Chronic and Doggy Style, those 2 projects alone put him in a special bracket, man. For sure, his impact on the West Coast, music was so enormous. I mean that, G thing, like, I mean the video when he.
But his first drop was Deep Cover.
Oh yeah, for sure. Oh,
so
man,
I went to the Compton swap meet when I got back. I went back home and I brought that back. And I said, Corey, listen what I got. And Corey played that thing on his big old hood speakers. They was like 7 feet tall with 15-inch subwoofers all up and down them. He played that thing in the Dabney Hall like 5 hours in a row one time. He memorized the song that night. Yes. He said, man, this cat is nice. Where you know him from? I said, we went to high school together. Hey, you don't know this cat. I'm like, okay. But that song went double platinum. His first album, his first single went double platinum. Deep Cover.
Creep with me as I crawl through the hood, maniac. Snoop Eastwood. Oh man, yeah, he's definitely legendary. So I got him at number 3, and I'll explain why. At number 2, I have Cube. I have Ice Cube, and I got O'Shea at 2 because I think he was the guy that proved that West Coast folks could really, really rap. And you think about like the beginning parts of hip hop, it was the East Coast thing. You got Rakim, KRS-One, LL. It was so lyrical. And of course you started having, the Kid and Plays, the Will Smith, the Fresh Prince. They started doing the party stuff. But right. Man, with NWA, like let's be clear. Ice Cube was by far the star lyrically of NWA, and a lot of East Coast guys were like, hey man, these West Coast dudes can actually really, really rap. So I just lyrically, man, I thought he was so good, man. And those NWA albums, right?
Mhm.
And you did want to battle. I mean, you did want to battle Cube,
right? He's going all in.
Oh, he would. Yeah, he no restraints there. And then number 1 is Pac for me. I think just his impact on hip hop and just the whole culture. It's still in 2021. It still exists to the day. And he wasn't lyrically maybe the greatest, sonically, maybe not but I'm telling you, the emotion, what he was talking about was so authentic, and you just really felt it, man. And so Pac will always be. And you got to remember too. I've talked about this before on the podcast. When I was playing for the Bearcats, man, that Machiavelli album was on constant replay.
You already know.
And Hail Mary, woo, hit him up.
Yes,
man.
Yes.
But I tell you, I got an honorable mention. Your honorable mention was one of them was E40. My honorable mention, who I think could go down as one of the greats, depending on what kind of projects he puts out here soon, is Kendrick Lamar.
Yeah,
man, he's amazing, man.
Yes, he needs a bigger catalog.
He does.
Yes, he is.
He sure does, man. He said he picks and chooses when he's going to drop, some albums.
And I love that.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of old school. It's old school.
Yeah, I'm going to give you, it's like Michael Jackson. I'm going to give you something every 2 years, maybe even 3 years, but it's going to be classic. I ain't going to just keep putting stuff out. Like, guys put out songs, and they have to, have like 8 collabs on their album to do a 10-album deal.
Right.
Because
right.
They can't write enough stuff. They write one verse, hey, get on this song, I'll pay you $50,000, and next thing you know, they got an album. They putting out something, 2 albums a year. It's like, come on, man, stop.
So true.
Just
so
stop.
True.
Create classics.
Right. No question. Well, Terry, as always, I appreciate you coming on the podcast, and I told you this when I text you. Every time you come on, our numbers are extremely high. People love to hear your analysis and your breakdown. I think you do a great job of not only giving the fans a perspective that's, from a player standpoint to think about this, but then you tie in stuff to help them understand. You kind of bring it down to a level where you're not talking over their head sometimes. You can bring it down and say, for example, or when I played, and you always tie in good stories. So got to keep you on, man.
Appreciate you, brother. Anytime. I like hanging with you, Meach.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. You know what? I have not been to one game this year. I know it's limited people coming, but this is the first. This is so weird for me, just watching everything on TV. How is it there at the games? Because you're there at the home games, at least, right?
Yeah, they try their best to have an atmosphere with excitement, with crowd noise pumped in, with music playing. But if this was the old Fifth Third Arena, it would be horrible. The new one, this new arena, so beautiful.
Yeah, it is.
It's so it's so much glamour, and there's so much stories on the walls. They did a good job of capturing the legends and having their stats and the pictures and all. It's just a beautiful place to be, even when it's it's not packed right now. But it's nothing like a packed arena. And once we get back to having some normalcy, it's gonna be good. I like the coach. I like our system. Our arena is second to none, and we're gonna get some good talent here to help reinforcements. He didn't recruit anybody because he says he doesn't want to recruit a high school kid that he didn't see.
Mm-hmm.
So he wants to wait, and so you're gonna see he's gonna get his guys late. Then he's going to check the market for one transfer, whether a Julius type, not necessarily a grad transfer, but somebody who's looking to change their situation. And those are going to be easy to come by. 2 years ago, 600 plus people were in the transfer portal. A year before that, it was 500 something. Last year, it was 800 and something. This year, it's going to be about 1,000. So it's going to be some talent out there.
Man, I might jump in the portal. Somebody might pick me up. I can still shoot a little bit, but man, that's amazing.
That's right.
That's good on the recruiting, because I know some folks, Bearcat fans, were tweeting out questions about what was going on with recruiting. So that's definitely good feedback, and I had not heard that yet. So
he doesn't want to take a guy because he's the only guy available.
Right.
He needs some shot blocking. He needs some muscle. But he, more importantly, he wants to recruit for his system. If he's going, one in and 4 out, he's going to need some taller guards that he wants to, shoot threes. He wants 3-point shooters. He wants snipers. I don't know if you've seen, Arkansas play yet, but I had my partner who works at UC, Mark Braffman. He's telling me, man, you got to watch Arkansas, man. All they do is they shoot threes. And Arkansas and Alabama. He was talking about Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
All they do is shoot threes. And I say, well, that's exactly how Coach wants to play. He wants to shoot that, and he wants to be exciting. And, so when we get the talent, we're getting to that point where we're attacking and shooting threes. But, there's going to be some reinforcements that he's going to get off the wire. He's going to bring in. And Cincinnati basketball is going nowhere. It's here to stay.
Yep. Love it. Terry, appreciate you coming on the Bearcat Basketball Podcast presented by the Healthcare Management Group. And I'll definitely be back in touch, man, to have you back on before we jump into conference tournament play. Sound good?
Yes, sir. Works for me, brother.
All right, brother. Let me know if you need anything, man, with the family. We'll
sir. Appreciate
it. All right, Terry. Talk to you, brother. Be safe.
Yes, sir.
I want to thank everyone for listening to Season 2 of the Bearcat Basketball Podcast. Once again, you can follow me on social media. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Alex_Meacham. Meacham spelled Meacham. I'm also on Facebook and LinkedIn, Alex Meacham. On Snapchat, Big Meach 41. And I'm now dancing on TikTok at Alex Meacham 41. I appreciate everyone listening to the Bearcat Basketball Podcast. Go Bearcats!